All right, first thing that I want you to write down is make sure you understand with the ambiguous case, okay, we're talking about ASS, okay, the donkey, all right? And it's a situation in which we could have no solution, we could have one solution, and we could have two solutions, okay? So that's the first thing that we need to know. Second, in the directions, it uses this phrase of solve the triangle. Anybody remember what that means?
You're saying it's not as simple as
Find all the angles and all the sides.
All right, find all the angles and all the sides. So when we're done, we basically need to know what angle A is, we need to know what angle B is, and angle C. Well, they helped us out by telling us the angle C is 23, but I'm going to actually have you change that to 75 degrees for a reason, okay? So please change angle C to 75 degrees. Okay, and then little a, they gave us is 10. Little b, we need to figure out, and then little c, they gave us is 5, okay? So there's 6 things in solving a triangle. 3 angles, 3 sides. They will always give you 3 of them. You need to figure out the other 3, okay? Ideas. Yeah.
law of cosines, we'll find AC.
Law of cosines, we can, okay? Now remember, we've said that law of sines is easier. Does anybody see a way of using law of sines?
Oh, you can do sine of 75 over 5, which equals sine of A over 10.
Do you agree with them? Okay, so we're going to multiply out the 10 to get the sine of A by itself. So sine of A, if it multiplies to the other side, is 10 sine 75 over 5. And then how do we get just plain old A? Yeah, inverse. So A is equal to sine inverse of 10 sine 75 over 5. Type that in. Tell me what you get. I need everybody to do it. Oh no. What does oh no mean?
No solution.
All right, so everyone's getting error, right?
Yep.
And it says what? Domain? All right, here's why. Okay, now what I want you to do is type in something a little easier. Type in just the part inside of the parentheses. Type in 10 sine 75 over 5. Just type that in. What did you get? 1.93. Does anybody see a problem with us doing the sine inverse of 1.93? Yeah. It's greater than 1. And what did we say the domain had to be? Between? Negative 1 and 1, because on the sine curve it goes up to 1 and it goes down to negative 1. And so since it doesn't go above 1, we can't do the inverse of 1.93. All right? And so what this simply means is no triangle. Okay? So anytime you get a situation in which you get an error, no triangle. All right? So that's like that, you know, in terms of my mechanical triangle over here. Okay? The sides just don't match up and no triangle exists. Okay? All right. Example 2. All I did was I kept the sides pretty much about the same, but this time I changed the angle measure to 23 degrees. Okay? All right, so our objective here is to figure out what angle A is, what angle B is, what angle C is. Okay, and it gave us angle C is 23 degrees. Okay, we need to figure out what A is. Well, that's 9. We need to figure out what B is. That's not given, and C is equal to 7. All right, ideas. What do you wanna do? How do you wanna solve? Law of sines. Can you set it up for us?
Yeah, sine 23 over 7 equals sine A over 9.
Okay? So do the same thing as we did before, multiply out the 9. So sine of A is equal to 9 sine 23 over 7, and A is equal to sine inverse of 9 sine 23 over 7. All right, tell me what you get this time. You should not get error.
30.2.
30.2? 30.2? Okay. All right, for angle measures, always round to the nearest whole number. And the reason why we want to simply do that is it'll make calculating our angle measures very simple. So we'll just take 30.2 and change it to 30 degrees. So if A is 30 degrees, okay, we can easily figure out what angle B is. What's angle B? 127, all right? And so the reason why we're doing that is now all the angles add up to an exact 180 degrees, okay? Now, here's how you get triangle number 2. So this is triangle number 1, okay? When you go to solve for your first angle measure, angle A, okay? If you recall, I said we're always going to find our smallest angle first, and we just did that, okay? All right? You are going to, for triangle 2, you are going to take 180 degrees and you're going to subtract 30 degrees, and that's going to create a new angle A. What would angle A be in our second triangle? 150 degrees. Okay? All right, so kind of to put this in perspective for you. Okay? All right? I'm going to draw this situation. Okay, so we still have C down here at 23 degrees. Opposite of C is 7, opposite of A is 9. But now A is 150 degrees, and angle B is up here. So, in triangle 2, we have angle A being 150 degrees. Angle B, can anybody tell me what angle B would be up here if one of the angles is 150 and one of the angles is 23? 7 degrees. And then angle C is 23 degrees. Okay, little a still is 9, and little c is still 7. And in both of our cases, we have to solve for B. How do you want to do that?
Law of sines.
Law of sines. Okay, so over here, coming back to the first one, I am going to do sine of 127 over B, because that's the angle on the side opposite B, okay? And I always want to go back to my original, okay, as in I'm going to do sine of 23 over 7, because that's what was given to me. I don't want to use the 30 because the 30 was rounded, okay? I cross multiply and solve, and I'm able to get B. Over here, I'm going to do the same thing, okay, but this time I'm going to do sine of 7 over B is equal to sine of 23 over 7. So because my angle B is 7 degrees, I got to do sine of 7 degrees over B, okay? In both cases, we cross multiply and solve. Can anybody tell me what B is for triangle 1? For this one, with the 127. Ryder? All right, 14.3 is correct. And can anybody tell me what B is for the other triangle? Again, cross multiply, solve.
Would be 14.3.
It is not 14.3. Notice that the angle is very, very small. It's the smallest angle, which means it has to be a number less than 7 and 9. Yeah. 2.18 sounds good. Okay, all right, reminder, okay, so Joe, you brought up a good question here, okay, is Remember, the bigger the angle, the bigger the side opposite. So if you look at, over here, it kind of works out because 127 is opposite 14, 30 is opposite 9, and then smallest angle is smallest side. But over here, 7 is now the smallest, and 2.18 is the smallest side, so it makes sense that those two go with each other. In the back, yeah.
How do you get 7 for your angle?
This one,
Yeah.
remember that these three angles have to add up to 180. All right, so remember that you're given the 23. That does not change. Okay? When you solved for the 30 for triangle 1, you do 180 minus 30, and that gives you angle A at 150. Okay? So if you're given a 23 and then solve for 150, 180 minus 23 minus 50, 150 gives you 7. Yeah.
When you found 150, are you always going to subtract 180 by angle A of the first triangle? Like, how did you decide at 30 degrees that you're just going to subtract by 30?
Okay, yes. When you go to find your angle A for triangle 2, you will always subtract the angle that you solve for from 180. Always, 100% of the time.
So, yeah, how do you choose which angle? Like,
The angle that you solve for.
Yeah, but we solved for 127 too, right?
Oh, the first one that you solved for, the one using the law of sines. That one,
Okay, thank you.
okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Does that answer your question in the back, Emily? Yeah? Jen? Good? Anybody else?
So
Okay.
your second smallest angle?
Well, it really will just depend. So I can't say hard yes, no, in terms of that. It's basically whatever angle you solve for using the law of sines, okay? And think about this, since we're always using ASS, you'll always use law of sines. You can always use it, okay? So the first angle that you get using the law of sines, take that angle, subtract from 180, you get your other triangle,
Alright,
okay? Does that make sense?
yeah.
All right, so we're gonna practice it.
You always have to do 2 triangles.
Okay, so we have to check to see if there's 2 triangles. Okay? In the first one, there wasn't even 1 triangle, so we didn't have to do this part. Okay? So there's none at all. This one we checked and there were 2. Okay? So in the next one, I'll give you a huge hint. We're gonna check. There's not gonna be a second triangle. You're gonna tell me why.
How did you
Okay?
check those?
All right?
How did you check?
Well, I'm gonna show you that. Okay? All right, so let's go on to the third example. All right. So since it's ASS, we can always use law of sines. So would you agree that I can do sine of 65 over 13 is equal to sine of B over 10? Do you agree with that? All right, so the questions that you're asking on example 2. Angle B could be 2 numbers. The angle that we solve for, and then the angle that we get after subtracting it from 180. So in the last example, it was angle A, but in this example, it's going to be angle B. Okay? So I cross multiply and solve. So I'm going to eventually get what? B is equal to sine inverse of what? 10
10 sine 65.
65 over 13. All right. Type that in. Tell me what B is equal to. 44 degrees. All right. So if B is 44 degrees, okay, this is how, we're going to help determine the second triangle. So what I want you to first do is tell me what angle C is in this triangle.
71.
71. Anybody need help getting the 71? What's the sum of those 3 angles? Can it ever be anything other than 180?
No.
Okay, all right. So here you go. We're going to try for triangle 2. And so what we do is we take 180 and we subtract 44. What is 180 minus 44? 136. All right, so in my triangle, if I draw it exactly the same way, okay, I've got a 65, a 13, a 10, And now angle B up here is now a 136. What's angle C?
Negative, wait, it can't be, it's not possible,
Why?
because 65 plus 136 is 201. That's
Okay.
gonna be greater than 180.
This is 201 degrees, which is greater than 180 degrees, so there is no second triangle, okay? So that's how you know, okay? So the very first thing, after solving for the first angle that you get, always subtract from 180. Plug it into its triangle. If it can't create a triangle, then there is no second triangle. In the last example, it was possible because we were able to come up with a 7-degree angle for the third angle, okay? So it's possible, all right? So now that we figured out what B is, we do have one more step, and that is we still got to figure out what little c is. So sine of 71 over c is equal to sine of 65 over 13. We cross multiply, solve. You guys understand how to get c?
Is it 13?
I got a 13.56.
Okay, close enough.
Okay?
0.56, huh?
Did I not type it in right?
I have 13.6. Okay.
Oh.
Oh, no.